My name is Brandon Hepburn. I'm an online fitness coach and personal trainer. I help ladies and gents get into the best physical and mental shape of their lives. So a little bit about me for this kind of first podcast is I just want to give you a backdrop onto my upbringing, like how did I get to where I am, what's going on, and a little bit behind the scenes. So I grew up in an incredible childhood. Grew up in the countryside. Just a great upbringing. You couldn't ask for anything better. Really supportive mum and dad. Grew up with my sister and brother, a little bit older than me, but grew up with my sister. I was very close to my mum, and we just lived outside. We were very sporty. We always lived on a farm pretty much, and we always had horses, dogs, cats running around. My mum was always breeding dogs, and we'd have different horses coming in all the time. So I grew up as a kid that was eating snails and worms out the ground and things like that. So it was absolutely brilliant. Went to a very small little primary school. I think there was like 80 kids in our school. And there was 11 in my year. So I went to a very, I guess you could say, I was in a bubble for a long time as a kid. But I learned so much. My dad could just let me out the front door. I could run across the road and things like that. No worries at all. And that's kind of the way that I want to raise my own children in the future. That's a topic for another day, probably. So yeah, up until I was up until I was 11, really, until I went to secondary school. I grew up in a country life, and that's literally it. When I got to secondary school, or towards the end of my primary school, I probably clicked on that my parents didn't have a good relationship. My parents were sleeping in different rooms, and it just even when I look back on it now, I'm like, oh, that wasn't normal. And shortly after my parents split up, there was a lot of I guess beef, if you want to call it, but in any relationship or any breakup, it's never great, right? So that was that. Many of you have been through, or you're a child of divorce or split up. Split up? It's probably not the right terminology, but you get the point. So that was a very kind of tricky couple of years. But my mum moved to another farm. She got asked to run this horse livery yard, and I was going to secondary school at the time. My dad was kind of living in the local village. I used to spend most of the time with my mum. I used to go to my dad's on a Wednesday night and every other weekend or something like that, something bizarre like that. And yeah, that was it really. I really enjoyed school. I was absolutely shit at school. I failed it completely. But I enjoyed school. I had a very good social life at school, and I was kind of one of those kids that kind of knew everyone but didn't get along with everyone, and I just kind of had a bit of I just did me sort of thing. Started playing rugby, and that was kind of the first sport I really fell in love with. And my dad absolutely loved the sport. He would take me to games, trainings, everything like that. He would give 110% into my rugby career, and it was great. I played for the Hawks, so Henley Hawks. I played for them, and then I had the opportunity to go to county trials and things like that. But this is when another sport came into my life, and it's a bizarre story. So my mum's yard that she got asked to run, it was close to the river, and she was like, "Oh, I'm gonna buy some boats for the river." And I was like, I was 10 or 11. I was like, "Yeah, we're getting jet skis. We're gonna smash this, speedboats." And she came home with kayaks, and I was like, well, this is shit, isn't it? Fucking hell. I was expecting fucking big beast machines as an 11-year-old kid. And yeah, so we got some kayaks, and it turned out the guy that lived a couple of doors down from me was pretty much legit a professional kayaker. Chris changed my life. A guy that I got very close with for many years, and he got me into the sport of kayaking. And ever since then, I fell in love with kayaking. It evolved very quickly for me. I ended up getting into the kayaking community, which was the loveliest community in the world in the UK, and anyone that watches this, and you guys are absolutely incredible. So thank you so much for being a part of my life, or my childhood. It's absolutely incredible. So that was that really, and it just unfolded. I started learning from others, learning from incredible athletes, and over time I just started competing in it, and I was alright. It's pretty good. then I ended up, I think I was 13 or 14. They were like, oh, do the GB trials, do like the national trials. And I was like, a 14-year-old kid, I was like, okay, let's just go have some fun. And I ended up making the squad. So how it broke down is that you have team members, you have a reserve, and you have a squad. So the squad train with the team because you're like the up and coming. And I made it at 14. I think I was 14 at the time. And that was it. I was off. I was hooked. So that was it. And then ever since then, I started competing. I qualified. I went to European Championships, World Championships. I did the US tour a bunch of times. And the sport really took off for me. And I loved every second of it. And it was phenomenal. It was absolutely phenomenal. And kind of when I got to like... So this is where life gets complicated, right? When I kind of got to 18, 19, 20, I guess that kind of 3-year spell, you kind of get to the stage where you feel a bit lost, right? I remember I just felt a bit lost. I kind of was losing the love for kayaking a little bit, and I didn't know like what I wanted. I failed college because I had the opportunity to go to America and go to school there. And it kind of, do you know what? This is where we get into it. So I met a girl on my first tour of the US, and my typical thing being 18, absolutely fell in love with this girl, adored her. And of course, when the opportunity came up to go to school there, I was like 100% the school was in the same place as her, everything like that. And I was like, yeah, let's do this. And so it was an opportunity to be with her and things like that. And obviously that went tits up, didn't it? So I stayed at school there for a period of time, and it just didn't work out. It's like when you go on holiday somewhere and it's amazing and things like that, and you're like, oh my God, I can live there. I'm like, actually, could you live there? That's the difference. Like every time I went to America and did that like tour there, I was traveling with amazing people, I was competing, I was doing all this fun stuff. But as soon as you live there, you do have the normal life. So I just don't think it was the right life for me. Anyway, I came back. I remember phoning my mum saying like, this isn't me, and she was like, just get on a flight and come home. And I was like, okay, cool. So I did that. I felt like an absolute failure. I felt like everything. Like I didn't have the sport that I loved anymore. I was heartbroken, everything. I felt like I failed my mum, I failed education, everything. And I went back to my old job. I was working at Hollister, and I loved it at Hollister. Hollister was probably one of the best jobs ever. It was people that were all very young, and we all very similar personalities. Like if you've been into Hollister store, everyone's very similar. So I absolutely adored that, and it gave me a circle of friends and a bit of a purpose at the time that I really needed. And I was working at a nightclub at the time as well on a Thursday, Friday and Saturday night. And again, I built an incredible relationship with the bar staff, the promotional team, everything like that. And it was amazing. I absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it. And I was working with a supplement company at the time with kayaking. And they asked me to come do a photo shoot with them just to update website images and things like that. So I was like, yeah, cool, let's do that. So I went there. I think this was the first time I dabbled into London on my own and things like that. So I went there and met a bunch of the athletes and things like that. And I was like all these girls were super attractive, fit. All the guys like had abs and things like that. And I was like, Jesus Christ, like what the fuck do you guys do? Like what's your job? Like do you have a life sort of thing besides going to the gym? And most of them turned around and they were like, yeah, we're personal trainers. And I was like, I'm doing that. And this is where it comes, obviously, then this is where I was like, right, where do I learn how to do this personal training malarkey? And obviously I found a course, the training room. I don't know if they're still going, but they were absolutely incredible. So if you do want to be a personal trainer, plug, the training room were very good. But yeah, I didn't really think about it at the time, like why I wanted to be a trainer. I think loads of people say like, oh, I did it to help people and things like that. And honestly, for the time period in my life, I did it because I needed a purpose. And training, doing sports, it defined me. It was who Brandon was. So the fact that I didn't know who I was like, right, I can train, I can get paid, and that's it. That's what I needed at the time. So I did it for a very selfish reason, I guess you could say, because I needed to bring back me and connect with me again. And then I actually liked coaching. I actually enjoyed working with people, and I actually enjoyed the feedback. People were like, oh my God, like, you've made me feel so much better. I've dropped weight. I feel more confident. I can put a belt on, and it's like one hole smaller. I can fit into a size 10 dress. All this sort of stuff. And I was like, it made me feel good. It did make me feel good, and I just fell in love with it. So I opened up a new Pure Gym in Reading. And I was there for a year and a half doing all the groundwork that a PT would. Teaching classes, getting up at 4 a.m, going to bed at 11 for months, years, all the way through. And I enjoyed every second of Pure Gym. It was absolutely incredible. And that is what formed me today. And I felt like about a year and a half into Pure Gym, I thought I was outgrowing where I was, I guess you could call it. And yeah, I just needed something different. So this is when I don't know why, even looking back at it now, I was like, I'm going to move to London. So I applied for some places in London. A couple of gyms got back to me. So I went to London, had a couple of interviews. I think I had Fitness First at Tottenham Court Road, and I had Gymbox in Covent Garden, or Gymbox in general. So I went for the interviews. I didn't like the layout of Fitness First. I kind of didn't think it was a bit corporate-y for me. And I just didn't click with it, right? And then Gymbox, I was like, you go into there, it's dark, it's a nightclub, there's music blaring, things like that. I was like, oh, this is sick. So had an interview at Gymbox. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. The guy was super nice that interviewed me and things like that. Everyone in there was incredible shape, everything like that. So I was like, here we go. And that was it. They offered me the place there. So I took that leap. I gave a month's notice at Pure Gym, packed up my life, moved to London, moved into this shitty little like shared room where it was leaking. There was water coming in. I remember when it rained, the rain would come onto me when I was sleeping. It was so shit. It was amazing. But that's kind of where it all kicked off again. It was like, right, I had to build up a new client base in London. I was working in Covent Garden in central London. So it was the hustle and bustle of city life. I think I was like 21, 22. I was like, right, here we go. Like, let's do this. And throughout, I think I moved there in the beginning of 2018. And then I was there all the way through. So I planned to get back onto a bodybuilding stage, at the end of 2018. So that was still the goal. So I got to London beginning of 2018, and I went and then obviously started Gymbox, all that sort of stuff, the move, living a shitty place, all that sort of stuff. So kind of, right, let's get back into this. Let's try and build client base. Let's get back to one-to-one coaching. Let's go London life sort of thing. So starting to get to the routine of it, and obviously it came down to dieting for my 2018 show, in bodybuilding, and junior physique. So junior men's physique was my category, and I shouldn't have done it. I literally just sat and wrote an Instagram and posted on this right now. I shouldn't have done that show. Moved to London. Financially, I was struggling, building a business from scratch. I don't think myself and my coach, I don't think we handled the prep extremely well. I wasn't in the position to diet. I was stressed, I was anxious, I didn't have the support, I didn't have the network around me. I just shouldn't have dieted, as simple as that. And I think we're gonna cover this in we will be covering this in future podcasts as well. So yeah, shouldn't have done that show. And I'm working with a mental performance coach right now. And we did a visualization thing the other day. And I suffer with anxiety. I'll be very open with that. I suffer with anxiety. And it actually came down to the root of my anxiety was actually the 2018, moving to London, prepping for that show and things like that. And that was the root of my anxiety. So actually that year was the greatest year of my life because I packed up my life, I was moving forward, but also I made decisions potentially I shouldn't have done. But that's how we learn, right? And yeah, that's that. But 2019 was absolutely incredible. I stayed in London, I was still at Gymbox, I was building great friendships, I was networking in London, I was meeting incredible people, and 2019 was great. I started to build a reputation as a trainer in London, getting referrals in and things like that, which was incredible. And I love my time in 2019 there. And then obviously, 2020 came around, right? So January to March was cool. Like, it was absolutely fine. Yeah, it was absolutely fine. So it's kind of like the repeat of 2019, so very good. And then COVID came around, right? So this thing that, well, we're still dealing with today. So when COVID hit, I moved back with my mum for 16 weeks. I think that's how long it was, the first lockdown. I moved back to my mum. I got in a very lucky situation at home where my mum had her horse at a livery yard, and there was a spare stable. It all had down like the matting for the horses. So we were like, okay, cool, we can turn this into a little gym. That's absolutely perfect, because without the gym, if I'm completely honest, I don't know if I could have kept my head there at all. It would have been very hard. And it turned out one of the ladies at the yard, her husband was literally like an Olympic lifter. He was, I think he was British champion, everything like that. And he had barbells, plates up to 230 kilos, squat racks, like everything. And I was about to cry when my mum came home from the yard and she brought home these pictures. And I was like, oh, that's it. I spent probably about $2,500 on extra equipment, just to kit out this gym. And then, yeah, for 16 weeks, that was it. I had a gym, I had an incredible setup. It was lovely, it was summer. I spent 16 weeks with my mum. And if anyone knows is watching me now, I'm a big mama's boy. So that was like the dream. And yeah, and that's when obviously my one-to-one coaching business, I couldn't do. Like, I wasn't in central London anymore. My clients, a lot of them moved out of London. So I had to obviously feed myself. I still had bills to pay. I still had my place in London that I had to pay for as well. So I was like, shit, how am I gonna afford this? And I was dabbling with online coaching a little bit. I probably had about 5 clients coming into lockdown. And I was like, right, this is the opportunity to push my online coaching business. And in that 16 weeks, I built an online coaching business through the power of social media, through the power of networking, through referrals, everything like that. And after the lockdown finished, I moved back into London with a friend. We got a place together, and I initially planned to go back to one-to-one coaching. So that's why I moved back to London. I was like, right, we got an apartment together. She planned to go back to one-to-one coaching as well, potentially. And so did I. And we just never did, because we established ourselves as online coaches by that point. So we never did. I even paid for a setup on Oxford Street as well, for a gym there, for a private studio. I never went to it. I went to it once to pay it, and that was it. I never went back. So yeah, that was it. So we had an incredible post lockdown. We had about 3 months, right? From the June, July to when, like, November, really. That was how long it was, wasn't it? Until that second lockdown kicked in. So that second lockdown kicked in. I moved back with my mum, and I was like, I didn't have any equipment. I sold it all. Rookie mistake. So if you've got equipment now, don't sell it. Keep it. So I was like, shit, what do I do? I remember I was speaking to a couple of girls in Scotland, because Scotland didn't go into lockdown then. So I was like, right, I booked a train ticket, right, I'm coming up, let's go. And she was like, hold off, I think we're gonna go into lockdown. I was like, fucking bullshit, this sucks, right? So I was like, what do I do? We don't know how long it's gonna be, sort of thing. And this is when the magical Dubai hype kicked in. So I knew a bunch of guys that were coming out here. Adam, who is my business mentor, he moved out here and he was running an event out here. So I was like, right, screw it. I'm gonna pack a bag, I'm gonna go to Dubai for 2-3 weeks. I did, that's it. And that 2-3 weeks, it's incredible. When you hear that saying of like, if you met me 6 months ago, you don't know me now, that 2-3 weeks here in Dubai changed my life. It fully changed my life. I met people that I never expect to meet. I had dinner with people that were the most inspiring, passionate, motivating people to be around. And this is, in a sense, this is why I'm producing this podcast, is that half the people I met we will be talking to them as well. So I'm excited to do exactly that. So yeah, I came home after that 2-3 weeks, and that was when we lifted the lockdown. So 3rd of December, I think it was, the gym's opened back up. So we're like, cool, we can go back to training, all this sort of stuff. And I was planning on moving in the new year anyway. I wanted to move up to Liverpool or Manchester because my old coach was up there and I adore him. I would give him every second of the day. So I was going to move up to Manchester or Liverpool either way. And a part of me still would. If I went back to the UK, I'd move up that way for sure. And I thought, fuck it, like, why don't I just move abroad? So luckily the people that I met here in November, Adam and a bunch of other people, they sorted me out with the visa company to sort out my visa process. And that was it. I gave them the money and that was it. Started the visa process of moving to Dubai and moving my business and myself here. And it came around a lot quicker than I expected. So when I came back, I was like, right, I want to move in the February. And then of course over the Christmas period, it didn't look so hot in the UK. Everything was starting to close up. I remember me and one of my clients, Ben, we were driving around. He was picking me up at my house and we were driving around trying to hit different tier systems to train and things like that. To be fair, we did it. We drove down to Burgess Hill on Christmas Day. We trained at Phoenix there and everything like that. But I think it was like the 2nd of January or the 5th of January, the UK went to a full lockdown. But I actually flew out here just after Christmas. So we flew out on the 31st of December and we landed on the 1st of January. And I think the UK went into a lockdown on the 5th or 6th. So yeah, like, probably I don't like using the word luck, but I think I got lucky with actually the dates that we just picked. Because at the end of the day, the reason that I did the move instead of going in the February that I had planned, I was like, well, either way, I'm going to be living at home with my mum. I was going to be paying rent in London anyway. Why don't I just start my life like in Dubai abroad sooner, right? Why don't I just take the commitment and just go and do it? So yeah, and that's pretty much what I did. So here we are. Probably a little bit on, like 2 months later on. But that's kind of like the backdrop of me. A little bit of a ramble, and obviously more will come out about my history and obviously the history of a bunch of people that are going to come onto the podcast. But this podcast is all about moving. I say this to my clients all the time. I don't care what you do, as long as you're moving one step forward every day, regardless. It can be the smallest of things. But this podcast is just about making the best of your life, like living the life that you want to live, and what can we do every day, that 1%, that one step every day, just to progress going forward in life. And that's what it's all about. So I will be talking to people that I haven't even reached out to yet. I'm going to reach out to these people, the people that I'm inspired by, so I'm sure that you're going to be pumped up and inspired to hear from them and hear their stories and learn how they did it and like what's the magic formula, because I promise you there really isn't a magic formula. And after talking to a lot of people and even Harry behind the lens, it's like Harry's going to be doing a lot of stuff for us. And he came out here, when did you come out here, like the month ago?
January, yeah.
January, like, so Harry came out here in January. He's still working for his job, corporate job. So but he handed in his notice the other day because his videography and his networking and everything like that has taken off. So in a month's time, he's left his corporate job and he is working for himself as a freelance videographer and photographer. So that's what it's all about. And it is about doing that 1% every day and make it like generally whatever the fuck you want to achieve in life, you generally can do it. Like, if you want to be an astronaut, the thing is, you generally can be an astronaut now. That's the thing. Like, if you want to be like anything, it's nuts. Like, it's funny when I asked my mum, I was like, what did you want to do when you were a little girl? She was like, oh, she wanted to be an equestrian rider and she wanted to be all this sort of stuff and like she wanted to do things like that, which is great. And if you ask any kind of parent and things like that, they kind of give you the standard jobs, right? I asked my niece before I flew out. That's a lie. Actually, I spoke to her on a Zoom call the other day. I spoke to my niece and I was like, what do you want to do when you grow up? She was like, I want to be a TikTok star. And I was like, fuck me. Like, Jesus, I remember my first job, I wanted to be a carpenter. it just goes to show you the world we live in now. And you know what? There's a part of me, it's just like, fucking do it, hun. Like, absolutely go for it. If you want to be a TikTok star, go for it. Number one, I hope you make it so I can use your platform to grow on. But yeah, like, anything is achievable with the world we live in now. You can pick up your phone and message CEOs, entrepreneurs, and that's it. So this podcast is all about 1% forward every day, taking that one step forward, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be fun. So I will see you in the future podcasts.